Ever get that feeling like stepping into a whole new world?
Oh, absolutely.
That's what it's like for so many kids, when they make that move from primary school to secondary school.
Yeah, big change.
Huge. And today we're going to dive deep into what's really going on for them during this transition.
Beneath the surface.
Exactly. We've got this really fascinating research paper, A Challenge of Living, understanding the psychosocial processes of the child during primary-secondary transition through resilience and self-esteem theories. It's by Jindal, Snape, and Miller from back in 2008.
I love that title.
A Challenge of Living.
Really captures it, right?
It does. And that's what we're going to unpack today. Our mission in this deep dive is to explore, the really essential personal and social aspects of this transition. We'll be looking at it through these lenses of resilience and self-esteem, trying to understand why it feels so monumental for some kids.
It's a big deal for them.
Huge. And while schools are naturally focused on, the practical stuff, the logistics, timetables, classrooms, all that, somehow.
The nuts and bolts.
Yeah. But for parents, teachers, anyone who works with kids, the real questions are often much deeper. Will they make friends? Will they fit in? Will they be able to handle the work? All of that.
The things that really matter.
Exactly. And that's the heart of what we're diving into today.
Right. So let's kick off with something we know from tons of research. This move to secondary school, well, it's just a period of real anxiety for a lot of kids.
Makes sense. New environment, new people.
Right. And studies have actually shown that their self-esteem takes a bit of a nosedive.
Oh, wow.
And their motivation in school and even their grades.
Really?
Yeah, there's a dip. Some big names in the field like Eccles and Midgley, Wigfield, they've all done studies that back this up. So it's not just like a few butterflies,
No, sounds more serious than that.
Definitely.
But we also know that loads of kids sail through this transition, right? Totally fine.
Absolutely. And the paper highlights that a good chunk of this success can be chalked up to the support system schools have in place.
Like good orientation programs, things like that.
Exactly. But it's also about those internal resources the resilience kids have and the support they get from their families, their friends. People like Hargreaves and Galton, Akos, their work really points to this.
So let's talk about resilience. That seems to be a big theme here. But what does resilience actually mean in this context?
Right. Good question. It's more than just, bouncing back from a tough time.
Right, because everyone faces challenges.
Exactly. The research digs deeper. It's really about this idea of positive adaptation.
Okay.
Thriving, even when you're facing some serious adversity.
So not just surviving, but actually continuing to develop in a healthy way?
Exactly. Luther's definition from 2003 really nails it. He says it's about showing healthy development despite experiencing a real threat or significant challenge. So it's about more than just coping. It's about continuing to grow and flourish even when things are tough.
I like that. So where did this whole idea of resilience in kids actually come from? How did researchers even start looking at this?
Well, it's a fascinating story. Researchers like Garmese and Rudder, they were working with kids who, had a higher chance of facing challenges. Maybe their family situation was difficult, things like that.
Okay.
And they noticed that some of these kids, despite the odds, were actually thriving.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute, how are these kids doing so well? And that really sparked this whole field of research into what helps children cope with stressful situations.
Like, what are the ingredients of resilience?
Exactly. And this led to all sorts of studies with kids facing various difficulties, family loss, serious illness, you name it. There's even this really famous long-term study by Werner and Smith where they followed kids in Kauai who would experience all kinds of risk factors.
And what did they find? Like, what were some of the common threads they saw in these resilient kids?
Well, across all these different studies, certain things kept popping up. Things like being comfortable socially, feeling good in social situations, and having strong connections with their family, their community, really feeling like they belonged. These were consistently linked to better outcomes for these kids.
So it's like having that network, those anchors of support.
Absolutely. And knowing how to connect with people, how to build those relationships.
That makes sense. So how does it actually work? The paper talks about Rudder's 4 main protective processes.
Right. Rudder broke it down really well. He identified 4 key ways these protective factors actually operate.
Okay, let's hear them.
First, they can actually lessen the impact of the stressful event itself, like maybe by helping a child prepare for a difficult experience.
Okay, so kind of cushioning the blow.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And second, they can actually reduce the number of other risk factors a child might be facing. So it's not just about dealing with one specific challenge, it's about strengthening their overall situation.
I see.
And the third one, this is super important, they can actually help build up a child's self-esteem.
Oh, that's huge.
It is. And that sense of being able to handle things, what we call self-efficacy,
Hmm.
it creates this positive upward spiral, you know?
Right, because if you feel good about yourself and your abilities, you're more likely to take on challenges.
Exactly. And then the fourth one is that these protective factors can open doors to opportunities that can help build confidence and important life skills, like maybe joining a sports team or a club.
So it's about expanding their world, giving them more chances to succeed.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And the paper brings in another researcher, Gilligan, who built on Rudder's work, focusing particularly on the school environment.
Yeah, Gilligan expanded on these protective processes in 2000.
Hmm.
He really highlighted 5 important areas.
Okay.
First, he talked about reducing the problems a child faces. You know, not just dealing with the consequences, but actually trying to prevent problems in the first place.
Proactive approach.
Exactly. And second, he emphasized seeing a child's development as this ongoing journey where we can intervene and make a positive difference at any point. It's never too late. Third, he talked about the importance of providing a secure base for kids.
Like those strong relationships we were talking about.
Exactly. Family, teachers, even close friends.
Yeah.
Having those people they can rely on makes a world of difference.
So true.
And fourth, he talked about nurturing self-esteem through positive experiences and achievements, giving kids opportunities to shine, to feel good about themselves.
I like that.
And lastly, he focused on developing self-efficacy by actually involving kids in planning and decision-making, especially around changes like this move to secondary school.
So giving them a sense of control over their own lives.
Exactly. It's about empowering them.
Makes a lot of sense. Now, the paper also mentions Catterall's research from 1998, which looked specifically at this primary-secondary transition.
Right.
He introduces these ideas of commitment resilience and academic resilience. What's the key insight from his work?
Yeah, Catterall really zeroed in on how students engage and perform over time, not just at one specific moment. And what he found is that resilience isn't this fixed trait. You know, like you either have it or you don't.
So it's not like a personality type.
Right. A student might navigate one challenging period really well, but then struggle with another. It shows that resilience is actually dynamic. It can change and develop over time.
So it's more like a muscle you can strengthen.
That's a great way to put it.
So taking a step back, what's the big picture when it comes to understanding resilience? What's the current thinking based on all this research?
The key takeaway is that resilience is increasingly seen as this dynamic process. It's not a stable characteristic, but something that can develop and evolve throughout life, even after earlier difficulties. As Newman and Blackburn put it, it's that positive adaptation that arises from the interaction of protective factors, both within the child themselves, like their personality and coping skills, and in their environment, like their family and community. And those factors act as a shield against risk factors, especially during big transitions like this one.
They make it sound like a two-way street, you know? Like it's not just about the kid's inner strength, it's also about the support they receive.
Absolutely. It's that interplay between nature and nurture.
Now, Newman and Blackburn really help us break down these different factors, right? They talk about 3 key areas: the individual child, their family, and the external environment.
Yeah, they provide a really useful framework. And one thing that's important to remember is that some factors that seem similar can actually be either protective or risky, depending on the specifics.
Oh, interesting. Can you give an example?
Sure. So think about the parent-child relationship. A warm, supportive parent-child relationship, that's a massive protective factor.
Yeah, makes sense.
But flip that around and you have a hostile, conflict-ridden relationship, and that becomes a major risk factor.
Right.
And they also make this really important point. While some aspects might have a genetic basis, a lot of these factors can actually be positively influenced by professionals working with children and families.
So there's hope there. Okay, we've covered resilience. Let's move on to our second big concept: self-esteem theory. The paper dives into this idea of the duality of self-esteem, really drawing on Rook's work from 1999. What is this two-sided view of self-esteem all about?
Right, so Rook's model says that self-esteem isn't just this one single feeling.
Uh,
It's actually built on 2 fundamental judgments we make about ourselves. First, how worthy we believe we are of respect from others.
that's our sense of self-worth.
Exactly. And the second is how capable we feel at tackling the challenges that life throws at us.
Which is self-competence.
Right. So you can see how both of these can really be put to the test during a big transition like this.
Because everything's new and uncertain.
Exactly.
And the paper argues that this transition, this move from primary to secondary school, can really challenge both these aspects, right? That's a key reason why it can feel like such a big deal, such a challenge of living for some young people.
Absolutely. Transition throws this whole new set of challenges at kids, which can potentially shake their sense of being valued and their belief in their ability to cope. It's a double whammy. And what's interesting is that the paper points out that previous research hasn't really dug deep into how transition, resilience, and this two-part nature of self-esteem are all connected.
But Miller and Daniel, in their 2007 research, they suggest these connections are actually way stronger than we previously thought.
Yeah, they make a really compelling argument.
So how do they link these resilience factors we were just talking about to these two dimensions of self-esteem?
Well, their main idea is that many of the things we've traditionally thought of as separate factors that help kids be resilient actually feed directly into these two aspects of self-esteem. Like, think about feeling like you can achieve things, having a sense of independence, that general feeling of, hey, I can handle this. All those contribute to your sense of self-confidence. On the flip side, things like feeling self-respect, holding positive values, believing in your friendships, those really bolster your sense of self-worth. It's about feeling good about who you are as a person.
And the paper ties this back to Brandon's definition of self-esteem from '94.
Right. Brandon describes self-esteem as that feeling of being competent to deal with life's challenges and being worthy of happiness. And the paper argues that these fundamental questions of worth and competence are at the heart of understanding how kids experience this transition period.
Now, let's circle back to resilience for a moment. The paper asks a really interesting question. Is this primary-secondary transition actually significant enough to be viewed through the lens of resilience theory? Is it really a major adversity for all kids?
Yeah, that's a valid question. I mean, it's something we adults might sometimes underestimate.
Because we've been there, done that.
Right. But research, particularly Newman and Blackburn's work, points to this difference in how adults and children perceive stressful events.
So what might seem minor to us can feel huge to them.
Exactly. Children often experience those everyday hassles, like navigating a new school, dealing with peer dynamics, as major stressors.
And when you actually break down what happens during this transition, there are tons of these potential hassles.
Oh, absolutely. Think about it from a child's perspective. There's often a break in the continuity of their learning. The secondary school might adopt this fresh start approach where everything's new and different.
So all that familiar routine is gone.
Exactly. And there are big physical changes. A new building to navigate, often multiple classrooms instead of just one. They're constantly on the move.
And if you actually listen to kids, their worries often revolve around things like being teased, the work being harder, getting lower grades, even just getting lost in this big new building.
Yeah, practical stuff, right?
But they also have hopes for more choices, making new friends.
Of course, it's a mix of excitement and anxiety.
And the way they're taught often changes too, right?
Oh yeah, big time. There can be a shift from a more child-centered approach in primary school to a more formal, maybe even lecture-style approach in secondary.
So it can feel less personal.
Definitely. And they might face different expectations from teachers. They lose that familiar family atmosphere they had in primary school.
And instead of having just one or two teachers, they suddenly have to adapt to the styles of multiple teachers.
Right. And that can be tricky for some kids.
Especially those who really relied on a close bond with their primary teacher.
Absolutely. Forming those secure attachments with multiple teachers in secondary school can be more challenging.
And then there's the whole social world, their friendships, everything's changing.
Right. Big time. Their peer relationships are in flux. Classmates they've known for years become just another face in a much bigger crowd.
And their social standing can change too, right? Like who's popular, who's not.
Definitely. There could be a real shift in their social hierarchy. And there can even be this tension between wanting to fit in socially and focusing on their schoolwork.
Right, like which group do they want to belong to?
Exactly. And let's not forget that sense of loss. They miss the familiar routines, the faces, the whole feel of their primary school.
It's like leaving a part of themselves behind.
Yeah, in a way.
Now, the paper talks about this interesting concept called the transfer paradox. What's that all about?
Yeah, the transfer paradox basically describes this. The transition to secondary school is seen as a step up in maturity, right? You're going to big school.
Right.
But at the same time, there's often a step down in how that maturity is reflected socially. You go from being one of the oldest in your primary school to being one of the youngest in secondary.
So it's like taking a step back in the pecking order.
Yeah, in a way. And Lucy and Ray, they also point to this dilemma kids face.
Mm-hmm.
They have to give up some of that security and protection they had in their smaller primary school environment in order to gain more independence in secondary.
So it's this combination of potential threats and the loss of familiar comforts that makes this period so significant. And the paper quotes Newman and Blackburn again, who stress that a successful transition really hinges on whether a child has the coping skills and the support they need.
Right. Without those, it can actually hinder their development.
That's a sobering thought.
It is.
Oh.
And we also have to remember that all these changes often happen at the same time as puberty, which brings its own set of physical and emotional challenges.
Oh, right. So they're dealing with all of that on top of everything else.
Exactly. As Rudolph and others have shown, puberty can really affect how children see themselves. It's like this perfect storm of change.
Okay, so we've seen why this transition can be so challenging. Now let's look at how these changes specifically affect a child's sense of self-worth and self-competence.
Right.
How does this shift in environment affect how they feel about themselves?
When it comes to self-worth, the loss of those familiar relationships and the flood of new messages they're getting from all these new people, peers, older students, teachers, it's a lot to process.
Yeah, it's a whole new social landscape.
And these new messages might not always be as positive or as clear as what they were used to.
Like, maybe they're not getting as much praise or attention.
Right. Or the feedback they're getting is more mixed. And that can really impact a child's fundamental sense of being accepted and valued. The paper references some classic work by Cooley, Rogers, Cooper-Smith, Rosenberg-Vernd. They all highlight how important these interpersonal interactions are for shaping our sense of self-worth.
So how we're treated by others really affects how we see ourselves.
Absolutely. Even Epstein's research emphasizes how the formation or loss of important relationships can significantly impact self-esteem.
Makes sense. Now, what about the changing social dynamics in secondary school? How does that play into self-worth?
Yeah, so in secondary school, the rules of the game can change.
Like what's cool, what's not?
Exactly. The boundaries of what's acceptable behavior can become a bit blurred.
Right, and they're trying to figure out where they fit in.
Exactly. And this uncertainty can affect their sense of worthiness. Taffaroti and Swan's research reminds us that even though our understanding of right and wrong is developing internally, we're always influenced by the moral judgments of those around us, especially during adolescence.
So they're looking to their peers for cues about what's right and wrong.
In a way, yeah.
Okay, so that's self-worth. What about self-competence? How does the transition affect their belief in their ability to handle things?
Well, the biggest factor here is the shift in the learning environment.
Okay.
Different physical layouts, different ways lessons are structured, different teaching styles, higher academic expectations. It's a lot to adjust to.
Like a whole new learning curve.
Exactly. And the paper highlights this issue of the fresh start approach that a lot of secondary schools use.
Which is supposed to be a good thing, right? Like a clean slate for everyone.
Right, in theory. But research by Boyd has actually linked it to a decrease in academic performance and motivation for some students.
Really? Why is that?
Well, it seems that for some kids, having to prove themselves all over again in this new environment can be really daunting.
Like they have to reestablish their academic identity.
In a way, yeah.
And this fresh start can have different effects on different kids, right?
The paper mentions the big fish, little pond effect and this idea of non-contingent success. Can you explain those a bit more?
Sure. So the big fish, little pond effect basically means that students who were high achievers in their smaller primary school might suddenly feel less competent when they move to a larger secondary school with a wider range of abilities.
How relative.
Exactly. Marsh and his colleagues have done a lot of research showing how these social comparisons can really impact how we judge our own abilities.
So even if their actual ability hasn't changed, their perception of it might.
Exactly. And then there's the flip side, non-contingent success. This happens when kids who are capable find the initial work in secondary school too easy. They're getting praised for work that doesn't really challenge them.
So they're not getting that sense of accomplishment. Right. And the research by Thompson and Hepburn suggests that when they eventually do face more difficult tasks, they might start to doubt their true abilities.
So it's like they're getting a false sense of security.
Yeah, in a
And
way,
again, all of these academic challenges are happening alongside the social and emotional adjustments and the physical changes of puberty. It's just a lot to handle.
it is. And it's important to remember that a child might feel strong in one area of self-esteem. Maybe they have a strong sense of worthiness, but feel less confident in their abilities, or vice versa. Merck calls this pseudo or defensive self-esteem. It's like they're overcompensating in one area to make up for feeling insecure in another.
So it's not always what it seems on the surface.
Exactly. And the real concern is for those children who struggle with both low self-competence and low self-worth, what we would call authentic low self-esteem. They're particularly vulnerable during this period.
Because they're getting hit from both sides. All of this really highlights the need for professionals working with this age group to be super aware of these dynamics. The paper dedicates a whole section to the implications for practice, arguing for a much greater focus on these social and personal factors during the transition.
Absolutely. It's about moving beyond just the logistics and really prioritizing the child's social and emotional well-being.
And that includes taking a critical look at how information is shared between primary and secondary schools.
Right. It shouldn't just be about academic records. We need to share insights into a child's personal and social circumstances to identify those who might need extra support.
But the paper also points out a potential challenge here. Primary teachers might not always have the training to easily recognize children who are struggling with low self-esteem.
Yeah, Miller and Moran's research really highlights that. They argue that primary teachers need a more sophisticated understanding of self-esteem, particularly this two-dimensional aspect and the idea of contingencies of self-esteem.
Contingencies of self-esteem, what does that mean?
It basically means understanding the specific areas on which a child bases their sense of self-worth.
So, like, is it their academic performance, their popularity, their athletic ability?
Exactly. Understanding what really matters to a child's self-esteem can give us clues about potential vulnerabilities.
And knowing about Ruck's different types of defensive self-esteem can also help professionals provide more targeted support, right?
Absolutely. Being able to recognize whether a child is presenting high self-esteem outwardly, but inwardly feels incompetent or unworthy, can really inform the type of support they need.
So it's about looking beneath the surface.
Exactly.
Now, the paper goes on to discuss specific teaching and learning strategies that have been shown to build both self-worth and self-competence, things like peer tutoring and formative assessment.
Right.
And it also mentions using things like role-playing and creative drama to help develop resilience. How can those be helpful?
Well, they provide a safe and supportive environment for kids to explore the challenges and uncertainties associated with the transition.
So they can kind of practice coping skills.
Exactly. And Gilligan's work also emphasizes the role of positive experiences in school, both academic and extracurricular, in fostering resilience.
Like feeling successful, feeling like they belong.
Exactly. And the paper also stresses the importance of those secure connections in secondary school, both with adults and with peers.
It's all about feeling supported.
Absolutely. And it suggests that schools should review their pastoral care systems and think about things like buddy programs, peer mentoring, anything that can help foster those connections.
Right, because those relationships can make a world of difference.
They really can.
And of course, families play a huge role too.
Absolutely. The paper emphasizes the need for close collaboration between primary and secondary teachers and the child's family to provide that consistent support throughout the transition. It's a team effort.
Okay, so looking ahead, the paper also points to some areas where further research is needed. It mentions that while there's a lot of research on how children see themselves academically, their self-concept, there's less research specifically using this two-dimensional model of self-esteem in developmental studies.
Yeah, that's a key area for future exploration. We need more research on how teachers can actually use these two-dimensional measures of self-esteem to better support students who might be at risk. Like, how well do these measures predict future difficulties, and how practical are they to use in a real school setting?
We're right, because research is great, but it needs to be applicable.
Absolutely.
And the paper also mentions that there's still some conceptual blurriness in certain aspects of resilience theory.
Yeah, like how we define and measure protective and vulnerability factors. There's still some debate about that.
And the potential issue of self-esteem being both something that contributes to resilience and something that results from it.
Right, that circularity.
Yeah.
More research is needed to really untangle those relationships and to better understand how we can help children maintain or improve their self-esteem under different circumstances.
So to wrap it all up, what are the key takeaways for those working with kids going through this transition? What should they keep in mind?
Okay, so big picture. This transition is about way more than just the logistics. The child's experience, their perspective, that needs to be front and center.
Okay.
We need to acknowledge the huge range of changes and challenges they're facing and how those can affect their sense of worth and their sense of competence.
Right.
And both primary and secondary schools have a crucial role to play in supporting those children who might be more vulnerable.
And when schools are sharing information about students, it needs to be more than just academic data.
Absolutely. We need those personal and social insights. We need to understand a child's beliefs about their own worth and competence and what matters most to them. Using tools like Rosenberg's self-esteem scale or Harder's self-perception profile for children can be really helpful.
Mm.
And secondary schools can then use this information to tailor their support, both academic and pastoral. And finally, we need to be using those teaching methods that have been shown to boost self-esteem, like peer learning and formative assessment. And we need to target the specific aspect, worth, or competence that needs the most support.
So it's about being really tailored in our approach.
Exactly. And ultimately, the goal isn't to shield children from all challenges. It's about giving them the skills and the confidence to face those challenges head on. As Rudder said, resilience isn't about avoiding risk. It's about those positive changes that happen when children learn to cope effectively. And that, in turn, strengthens their self-esteem. It's a virtuous cycle.
It's been really eye-opening to see how these theories of resilience and self-esteem shed light on the complex world of that move from primary to secondary school.
It is fascinating, isn't it?
It is. It really highlights how important this period is for a young person's sense of self.
Absolutely. By understanding these underlying processes through the lenses of resilience and the two dimensions of self-esteem, we get these incredibly valuable insights into how we can support these young learners during such a significant time in their lives.
On that note, here's something for you to ponder. Think back on your own life, the times you faced those big transitions. How did your own sense of feeling worthy, of feeling capable, influence how you navigated those changes? And how might those two aspects interact in the experience of a child stepping into that unfamiliar world of secondary school? Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
It's been a pleasure.
See you next time.
Bye for now.